Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this clown decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And today we are once again talking about our great leader Starmer, and also leader of the opposition, who I keep forgetting is leader of the opposition, Kemi. So it was PMQs yesterday, the weekly chance for opposition MPs to ask the Prime Minister some questions, and at the start of every one, the leader of the opposition usually gets a quick-fire round. Anyway, immigration came up. Here's how that went.
In fact, he seemed to want to talk about immigration. So let's talk about immigration. He has relaunched yet again. Many new targets, 6 milestones, 5 missions, but why was cutting immigration not a priority?
Now, this is a perfectly fine question, and it's one that I would like an answer to. But as we will see, there is just a really easy deflection that Keir Starmer can wave back at any Tory that would be in this position, especially with someone like Kemi, but, well, I'll let Keir Starmer take it away.
Speaker, I'm glad she now wants to talk about immigration. Last week she said she didn't, and for good reason, because the previous government presided over record high levels of immigration. The figures just a few weeks ago, nearly 1 million on net migration. That is unprecedented. A one-nation experiment in open borders under the last government. And she was the champion. She stood up and praised the then Tory Home Secretary for listening to her on removing caps on migration visas. So she was applauding it. Now she's furious about what she was campaigning for.
Yeah, Kemi in the really unfortunate position where to win any election now, you have to have the facade of caring about immigration. I mean, that's kind of always been true. But it's more true than ever now because, yes, the figures that Keir Starmer brought up are absolutely stupendously ridiculous. And I think this PMQs just sums up my whole feelings on the issue. An awful lot like the election debates, back when we had the election, effectively all the whole thing was Labour and Tories pointing at each other saying, look at them, they're going to raise your taxes, we're totally not going to do that. And both were lying. We know for a fact that Labour were lying. We know quite confidently that Tories were lying, so they were still raising taxes as they were saying that. And now that the election is over, they still need to give each other the Punch and Judy treatment, and now they're doing it on immigration, where once again they're pointing at each other saying, look at them, they're not going to bring down immigration, we totally are. And it's just not true in either sense. Bring down immigration, by the way, obviously it's always going to come down from 1 million, that's obviously going to happen, just naturally, because it was a post-COVID wave. The thing is that when people say bring down immigration, quite clearly they mean basically nothing more than a net zero cap, which is what Reform's position is, and guess who are the ones currently rising in the polls? Yes, it's Reform.
We will drive it down. We will drive down lawful migration. We'll drive down illegal migration.
And this just isn't convincing anyone serious, which I suppose is the problem. Most people who are able to vote in this country, they're not serious about following politics. So they are the only type of people that Keir Starmer has to worry about convincing. This is why Reform is important. Tories clearly aren't good enough to make people think that Labour aren't serious about immigration, because Tories were in for 14 years. Forget about all the coalition stuff. Immigration just went up even when they had the biggest majority. So on this subject, it really doesn't matter. People are not going to take the Tories seriously, and they're not going to take the Tories seriously when they say, oh, look, Labour are lying. Because the underlying implication of saying Labour are lying is that we're totally not, we will bring down immigration, and no one believes them. This is why it's an open door for Reform, and that's why they're going up in the polls.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about open borders. He was the one campaigning for free movement. I was in this House asking for a lift on skilled migration. He was there supporting all of the people who should not have been in this country. He wanted us to relax immigration.
Again, it's the whole problem with the current situation. Yeah, it is true that in the abstract, people are basically fine with high-quality immigration, so high-skilled workers, maybe some students, don't allow in criminals or people who are going to be dependents. That's effectively what the position is at the moment, but the problem is that because we're at the 1 million mark, people are kind of demanding just shut it down, almost. When you got to realise, when the term net zero is thrown about by Reform, people don't really actually take that as net zero. They do kind of take it as a hell of a lot less. But if you have a history anywhere of liberalising immigration in any way, even if it's in the abstract good sense to only allow high quality immigrants in, it's not going to be good enough for people, unfortunately. But again, it's a good retort anyway from Kemi. Yeah, we're talking about someone who's talking about bringing down immigration, but at the same time wants free movement with Europe in a New Deal style thing. As it was like with the election, both parties are just lying to you, and everyone seems to actually understand that now. Hence you've got a three-way tie almost between the two main parties and then Reform, which again is fairly unprecedented.
But as he's so keen to talk about the past, let's look at his record. 4 years ago, the Prime Minister signed a letter demanding that foreign criminals be allowed to stay in Britain. Dozens of Labour and Liberal Democrat MPs repeatedly signed these letters insisting that rapists and murderers be allowed to stay here. One of those criminals, Ernesto Elliott, had 17 convictions, including for knife crime. After his deportation was blocked, Elliott went on to murder someone. He was able to stay here and murder because people like this man campaigned against deporting criminals.
Now again, absolutely fine point to bring up, and I'm sure Starmer is going to say the obvious retort of, yeah, but you were in government though. But as a side note, this is an absolutely massive vibe shift. Huge vibe shift as far as I'm concerned. Immigration was always kind of the third or fourth topic brought up, just saying, oh, you know, are you going to have a cap or anything? No? Okay, let's move on to other things then. This is the main focus of PMQs now. The great immigration debate, or not so great immigration debate, is front and centre. It's in the newspapers, it's been in the newspapers a lot, but now it's in Parliament an awful lot. This has broken through the Westminster bubble. Why is that? Probably because you have 5 Reform MPs overlooking this whole thing and basically laughing at both of these people because they know they're not serious. You know, you've got someone like Rupert Lowe who's basically in Parliament every day, almost harassing the Home Office. In fact, he sent out this tweet yesterday. The Home Office has denied my request to publish data on illegal migrant crime. They claim that the public doesn't want them to commission dozens of entirely new statistical analysis simply to answer questions in Parliament. Kind of hate to say it to the Home Office, but that is actually half of your job. Millions of Britons want to know this information and deserve to know it. Tell me, do you want to see these figures? It's a cover-up. I have no doubt whatsoever they hold the information on the crimes being committed by illegal migrants, and if they don't, that's an even bigger scandal. All true, Rupert. You're doing a very good job in Parliament, and yeah, effectively what he's saying is that he has harassed the Home Office so much that they just want to stop doing work for him. Effectively because when any sort of immigration data comes out, especially around crime, especially around the rest of Europe, it is damning. It is horrendous. It is effectively an absolute golden goose for, you know, people campaigning against mass immigration. People like me, people like Rupert Lowe, everyone at Reform. And the thing is that you're probably going to start seeing the Tories trying to copy this sort of activism because obviously people like it, and if people like it, that means possible votes. So they're hopefully eventually going to have it from not two sides necessarily, because they're both on the right of Labour, but it's certainly going to be coming from two separate parliamentarians. You know, the Shadow Home Secretary is probably going to start going on about this. I can't remember who that is, but hopefully they start taking it seriously and start pushing for similar things as Rupert Lowe. I can't imagine he'd support him necessarily, or maybe he'd talk to Rupert Lowe and say, can you support me when I'm doing the same thing as you? And at that point, how are the Home Office supposed to keep saying, oh, we can't get that for you? Well, it's the civil service, they found a way, I guess. But either way, this is a huge vibe shift and something that I don't think any government is going to be able to just slide under the rug as they keep trying to do.
Will he apologise for signing these letters?
Mr. Speaker, I'd firstly remind her that when we're in the number now under their watch of migrants coming to this country, nearly 1 million.
Yeah, happen under their watch. Exactly as I said. It's such an easy retort. But as I say, Kemi's between a rock and a hard place where she kind of has to say this, otherwise she'll be seen as weak on immigration. But when she does ask for it, it's all of this easy retort of, yes, but this all happened under you, didn't it?
And the particular example she puts to me is an example of failure under her government to take the necessary measures to keep our country safe.
Now, I could go through the rest of this PMQs, but honestly, there's no point. It's just similar back and forth between oh, Starmer, you signed letters that wanted open borders, and you've been an open borders advocate for years. And Starmer just replies, yeah, but you were in charge when that was actually happening. Now, Starmer being part of Labour is pretty self-explanatory that the man is absolutely for open borders, and all of this is self-evidently just political expedience for him. But Kemi Badenoch, who obviously, I'll give her a bit of leeway. Her liberalising of visas was for high-skilled workers. It probably ended up being a scam, especially with the students as well, but as I say, I will give her a bit of leeway. However, what I won't give her leeway on is things that have happened post her becoming leader, which have been frankly nothing but embarrassing. So after this PMQs, for some reason she thought it was a good idea to keep going on about the fact that Keir Starmer signed a letter in favour of open borders, and that it shouldn't deter illegal migrants, which again, yeah, it all might be true. The problem you run into is that, again, we can all just point at you and say, yeah, but under you this was actually happening. And as much as I hate to say it, Labour are actually deporting people. And as far as I'm actually aware, they are working with the continent to try and smash these gangs, which, again, I don't think is a great policy. I don't think it's the most effective policy. However, you also only managed to get one person to go to Rwanda, and you had to pay him thousands of pounds to get him there. So again, even on that front, Starmer is still doing better than you. It's not great, it's not perfectionate. I don't even know if I can say it's necessarily good yet. We have to wait and see how the policy turns out. However, I have literally already seen Labour be more effective at this issue than the Tories ever were in 14 years. So again, this letter may be true. It may be true that Starmer in the past has not wanted to deter illegal migrants and wanted to open borders. In fact, I know it's true. But I think Kemi Badenoch needs to realise that she's not going to be able to convince anyone that she's any better. Reform are, hence I'm fully backing reform. But another major blunder is just Kemi's inability to be an effective leader on basically anything. Obviously, in this case, we're focusing on immigration. Because on account, Scott Goetz, sorry if I butchered that name, had a little snippet of an article here where Robert Jenrick and Neil O'Brien co-authored a paper for the Centre of Policy Studies which suggested that visa decisions should be based on nationality because, for example, Australian immigrants earn more than the average Somali immigrant. Is that something that Kemi Badenoch would consider? To which Kemi said, well, we'll be looking at everything, and she hasn't read the Centre for Policy Studies report, but has seen part of it referenced. And apparently, as Equalities Minister, so when she was in government, she tried to commission work on what makes some migrants more successful than others, because she claims that the data was just not there, and they needed to go out and get the data, and we need to get ourselves time, and to use a phrase from New Labour era, think the unthinkable. But the problem is, as Scott here says, all the data's there, and handily has a whole thread of it. Because this chart here shows how much of a net contribution or detriment to the economy each type of migrant is. So you have your average UK resident, who apparently is only a net contributor from the ages of about 45 to apparently 85. I have no idea how they work that out, but okay. I would have expected it to be lower, but anyway, this is the data. As you can see, with low-wage migrants, they are never, ever a net contributor to the economy. Average wage migrants, they're alright most of the time, and then high wage migrants, less so. So there you go, already you want them to be a net contributor, you want them to be an economic benefit, which is the point of immigration. Don't let any low wage migrants in. And don't let any dependents in. I don't know why that's acceptable either. Just thinking back to my parents, my dad once had a 6-month stint in Sweden to work over there for a bit, I think as a contractor, and his visa only lasted as long as his work lasted, which was 6 months, and he wasn't allowed to bring any dependents over either. Why was that? Well, because he was there to work and contribute to the Swedish economy in some way while making money of his own that he could obviously send back and bring back to Britain. Yet for some reason now immigration seems to have to be this more permanent thing where an immigrant comes over and they're here permanently. Now that is fine for people who wish to integrate, but obviously when it's in the hundreds of thousands of people coming over to stay, it's obviously not going to work out, and it is not sensible. And the only type of person that should be doing that anyway are high wage earners, we would argue. For two reasons. One, they're more likely to have a, frankly, higher IQ, which actually correlates with being more open-minded, which then actually correlates with them possibly being to integrate better. And then 2, obviously, it's the obvious economic factors. But we are nowhere near that situation, which is why I keep saying, basically you have to shut this whole thing down until we know what the hell's going on. Next up is a graph, albeit from Denmark, showing that the average contribution by country of origin obviously changes depending on the country of origin. Westerners, so people from Europe and the Anglosphere, typically they are almost as much of a net contributor as the native population, according to this graph. Not the same, obviously, slightly less, but still, it is quite clear that they are mostly worth having pretty much no matter the age. Obviously, when they're kids, it's not as good, but, well, I suppose they're looking for long-term investments then. Other non-Western immigrants and their descendants, apparently, which is basically every country outside of North Africa, Pakistan and Turkey. So, that includes Indians, Chinese, Japanese, places like that. Nowhere near as productive as Western immigrants, but still between the ages of about 25 and 55, possibly 60. Generally net contributors, so maybe that's what you should target. And then, as the think tank suggested, North Africa, Pakistan and Turkey, basically, at least in Denmark, they never contribute. They never contribute. So if we're making the economic argument, yes, I think it's absolutely fine to be selective to this extent. Now, does this mean that absolutely everyone from these MENAPT countries are going to be useless and never contribute? No, not necessarily. However, if you are looking at immigration in the millions, you are effectively going to have to group people and be selective to that extent. Which again, I think is absolutely reasonable. And again, even if you are bringing people over, obviously you should then be selective about those individuals anyway. No one over on low skill wage, because that doesn't bring in any money. And then obviously don't let them bring their dependents over unless they are serious about trying to naturalise into the country. Limit it to 2 years at most if you have to. But then again, even when you're at the point where you're only bringing average to high wage workers over, you probably don't even need to bother with that, because they're the type of people who are going to be anywhere people and integrate well anyway, or like my dad was, want to come back. But anyway, to bring this back to the whole point, Kemi Badenoch says that there's no data. As I am going through, there is clearly data that supports this. So as a Qualities Minister, why didn't she bother looking at this? Well, from what I can gather about her since she has been leader, it's because she's just bone idle and lazy. And the signs were all there, given the fact that she would miss half her interviews and basically wasn't anywhere to be seen during the campaign when she was going for leadership. However, obviously most of the Tories had already made up their mind that it was going to be her, effectively, as I said, because she's a black woman and therefore calling her racist is ineffective. As I say, the boomers are like 5-10 years behind us. Big brains on the internet, but, you can't blame them for that, I'd say. And the final point from Scott is that, well, there'd be a quick win if we go through these statistics. So according to the Federal Employment Agency, I believe this is over in America then, around 226,600 Syrians are currently employed in jobs with Social Security coverage as of May 2024. And around 279,600 Syrians were registered with the Federal Employment Agency as looking for work at the end of November 2024. Of these, 155,100 are unemployed. This means that they are currently in the labour market, and the unemployment rate is 37%. In other words, okay, obviously get the data for within Britain, that's what Rupert Lowe is demanding the Home Office do, but this is, again, a pattern all over the Western world where all these people have come in. It's obviously a disaster. I mean, yeah, Syria's all of a sudden ended the civil war, and now there's talk of letting more refugees in. Again, no, we had this problem. It caused an awful lot of problems over the past decade or so. The Refugee Convention is not fit for purpose. There is probably a way where you can make these people safe and not have them intrude and disrupt the way of life of Europe and America. The neighbouring countries argument is one that always makes me happy, frankly, and I don't know why that isn't made international law, but part of the caveat is, okay, we're not taking our fair share, sure. However, I would not mind if foreign aid was all put towards helping refugees in countries that are neighbouring their country of origin, so that it's not put all on the onus of these neighbouring countries and they go bankrupt having to oblige this new international order. I am happy paying for that, as long as we don't have to take the absolutely enormous amount of refugees that we've had to in the past that has ended up with basically everyone from Calais thinking that they can come over. That is what has resulted here. As I say, I am fine helping refugees to some extent, but there are alternatives to opening our doors to them when an awful lot of problems result from it. I'm trying to make everyone happy here. So again, all these easy answers and suggestions for what can be done to reduce immigration and effectively eliminate low-quality immigration. However, as we saw in PMQs, the best that we got from Kemi Badenoch was effectively, oh, by the way, he's an open borders advocate, only for Sir Keir Starmer to say the exact same thing back. It's like a rerun of the election with the tax argument. It's not helpful, it doesn't get us anywhere, and this is why my disappointment is immeasurable, both with Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch. I kind of can't believe how bad she is. And I honestly wouldn't be shocked if she gets kicked out of being leader of the opposition before Keir Starmer's kicked out of being Prime Minister. But, well, we'll have to wait and see what happens, I suppose. But that's everything for today. So, next Monday... Oh, no, actually, I'm on a stream tonight. So, over on the Anglo Gang on Brutus's channel, which I believe is Alfred the Invincible, I will be over on there. I think the main reason I'm coming on is to talk about why Oliver Cromwell was one of the worst people in English history, but there will be a number of other topics. Not sure when I'm going to make it on that stream exactly. I'm expecting, even though it starts at 7, to be on from about 8 o'clock, possibly later. Either way, you'll catch me there tonight. On Monday, it's a Worcester Club Antiquity stream yet again. Do come along to that. Tuesday, it is a newscast over on the Worcester Club. And next Saturday, it is Laughing at the Guardian again, so do come along to that. It'll be the Cosy Christmas one, so, you know, it'll be chill. It'll be nice, you know. Anyway, what you can do as well to help the channel is subscribe, become a member, send super chats, super thanks. They all really do help the channel. And once again, that's everything I had for you for today. So once again, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, goodbye.